Welcome to the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustment meeting for March 5th, 2020, which is now called to order. If you are not the applicant and you're here to speak on a matter, we ask that you fill out one of the white forms. I don't see anyone that would apply to. First item on the agenda is to receive the minutes from the February 20th, 2020 meeting. Do we have a motion or any changes?
Motion to receive minutes.
I have a motion and a second to receive the minutes from the February 20th, 2020 meeting. Cast your votes, please. And minutes are received. Next item on the agenda are continuance requests or withdrawals. Do we have any?
Yes, we have two continuances. Item number 2, case number 14704, 05, and 06, continue till March 19th. And item number 3, case number 14711, continued until March 19th.
Do we have a motion to continue those?
Motion to continue items read.
We have a motion and a second to continue the items as requested. Cast your votes, please. And they're continued.
Okay, item number 1, case number 14707, request of Veritas Development, LLC, for a variance to the requirement that 80% of a building be within 10 feet of the street right-of-way in the UD Urban Design Overlay District located at 132 Northwest 23rd Street.
Good afternoon. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. Mr. Chris George is also here with me. It is an honor to be here as the only item on the agenda. I do apologize if we had any timing. We would have happily continued this to allow you to all have a day off. However, we've suffered a 2-month continuance at the Urban Design Commission, so time is kind of important. We've got lots and lots of families in my neighborhood demanding coffee, and so we must plow ahead. So we are seeking a variance to the setback. This is a bit of an anomaly in this part of Oklahoma City in that, this site is Zone C4. Much of 23rd Street is Zone C4. C4 is the most intensive commercial district that Oklahoma City has. Included within C4 is a fast food with drive-through window use unit. Because of the small nature of this site, what the setback would do is essentially eliminate that use. And so when you look at 23rd Street, there have been other cases similar to this in which variances were granted, but I want to talk a little more specifically about what we did to look at the site to find other ways to try to make it work, understanding that for Starbucks, a drive-through is a critical element to their building. So if you look at the site plans I've shown you, what you've got here are a series of iterations of the building trying to work within the confines of the code, but also the overlay that exists for the Urban Design Commission. As I said, we went first to the Urban Design Commission in December. At the time, staff recommended a continuance to allow us to hear the feedback from the commission and go back. We did that. We worked with not only Uptown 23rd, but also the Heritage Hills neighborhood. At the time, Uptown 23rd had filed a protest letter. So we worked our way through it, understanding some of the concerns that is generated by Starbucks is going to be traffic. So if you look at the site, we have in the end, if you go to sheet A00.017, you'll see we have eliminated an access point onto 23rd, and will now share an access point with the Carl's Jr. site, which is to our east. In addition, we have eliminated the cross-access for that site on the north end of the site, shoved it down to the south. So what you'll see in this image is demonstrating the number of cars that we can queue. So to get past this issue of having buildings at or within 10 feet of the building line, what we've done, as you flip through, is we have included a very robust landscape plan to almost create an urban wall through our landscaping, but still allow pedestrians and others that might be close to the site to travel safely, not only along the sidewalk along 23rd, but also as they're going to go from the sidewalk and enter into our site. Another change that you won't see through here, but I can tell you, you'll see the patio that is now on the northeast corner of the building. Originally, that was on the southeast corner of the building. My client had to go back to Starbucks corporate and get approval to change the entire envelope and how the building works. So shoving that patio up closer to the frontage was met with a lot of enthusiasm by not only staff, but ultimately the Urban Design Commission. So the Urban Design Commission last week did approve the project, and in so doing took a separate vote to recommend approval of this variance application that you're now hearing today. So we believe we meet the statutory elements. Again, I think if you apply the ordinance to this application, you're essentially authorizing almost a rezoning of the property because it eliminates a use. We think it's a unique and peculiar site based upon the size constraints that we have. But the size constraints, frankly, I think added a benefit in that we're going to eliminate an access point to this site, share it with the Carl's Jr. to the east. Additionally, the access onto Robinson on our west, if you're familiar with this area, Robinson is actually divided by a median street, and so that piece of the street you see is actually northbound only. You can't make a left turn. So we have modified our interest to make it clear that it's right only, and we'll actually pour concrete to divert all traffic north towards 23rd. So we think we've solved all the traffic problems. In terms of the third element, we don't believe that there will be any detriment to the public good or impair the purposes and intent of the comprehensive plan, as evidenced by, I think, UDC, but also staff recommending approval. And finally, we believe this to be the minimum necessary to alleviate the hardship. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
How far are we out of the 10-foot?
I believe it's 18.
18 total?
Just over 20 feet.
Okay, that's about what I figured. And my only concern would be, as far as traffic, I'm sorry, I turned it off, would be the traffic on 23rd that backs up all the way past Robinson there regularly, but there's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah, so if you look at how a car would enter our site to get in the drive-through lane, it's going to be here. And so what we show here, there's actually 15 cars queued without any problem. And so any additional queuing would queue here first. And so Robinson being exit only, I don't see any impact there because a car would just have to exit and go on. Any queuing, you're talking about 20 cars deep, and I don't think that would happen just based upon the nature of how quick these orders tend to be. So, but that was something we talked a lot about the first go-around with UDC, and this revised design was fully satisfied them. So there you go. There's a good image to see. We're kind of building this urban wall with landscaping to soften it, but then allowing this safe pedestrian pathway with the patio right there.
I like the changes that were done. I think those are appropriate, and it definitely helps the application. Traffic is obviously the number one concern here. Has Carl's Jr. opined at all in their position?
So my understanding is my client went and bought that site.
Okay.
So we feel good about the ability to. So to that end, I do think, and I think that was an important piece for the UDC. We could develop this site, frankly, with uses that would be, I think, not a good fit with that neighborhood immediately to the south. And if you had different ownership and you didn't, say, want even a drive-through, you're going to have an additional point of access onto 23rd, which is problematic. That stretch of 23rd, especially in the 5 to 6 and then in the mornings, is a problem. So eliminating a potential access point, I think, is a positive long-term for this site.
Yeah, and the location for a Starbucks, I know they've done their own market research, but it seems like a prime location for Starbucks. I wish there were a way to conditionally grant just to see how the traffic issue shakes out. I don't think there is a way to do that, but that I am curious about whether this is going to cause any hang-ups.
We did meet, that traffic was a primary concern of the Heritage Hills folks. The Uptown 23rd, their concern, frankly, wasn't traffic. It was more about the built environment and what that would be. They withdrew their protest in the end. But in terms of Heritage Hills, having the cross-access between the sites being on the south end rather than that north end is what ultimately, I believe, made them satisfied that any congestion and traffic is frankly going to be internal to the site and something that Starbucks will have to deal with, and it won't be a problem to the traveling public.
Excuse me, you did say it's a right-hand turn only coming out?
Yes, onto Robinson, right only. Robinson is actually a split street there with a big landscape median. And so one of the concerns was that people would exit the site and take a left and thereby be going the wrong way. And so we will have it striped and painted as well as pour the curb so that it forces cars to the north.
And will there be signage that also states that it's right-hand turn only?
So we're going to work with staff on that because it is a public right-of-way. We'd have to work with staff. So that is an avenue that we're going to look at.
Okay, thank you.
There's some large signs also here on on Robinson and 23rd facing north that say "Do not enter." That was one of my concerns.
So it's a weird. I mean, I live in that neighborhood, and I've done it probably 5 times this year. Because when you're coming west, now it really only happens when you're coming west. So if you're coming west, you will have already entered the site. And so it's really when I'm trying to get into the neighborhood, the way that 23rd kind of slightly angles, when you see that opening, you kind of want to go, and I've done it. But I don't believe it will be a problem for this site because the westbound traffic on 23rd, you will have already entered the site here.
How do you feel about losing your car wash there?
You know, saddened, but we'll get over it.
It's probably almost historic.
Don't throw that word around. Yeah.
Were there any other variances that you anticipate with this project? I saw a couple of signs.
No, we have to go back for our signage plan. At this point, I don't anticipate it. Again, it is Zone C4, so C4 is going to allow at least a 40-foot sign. And so what we're trying to do is, frankly, kind of combine the Carl's Jr. maybe and this, but we're not kind of there yet on terms of what our signage will be. But at this point, I don't anticipate any additional variances needed.
Yeah, I mean, I can support it. There are some obvious concerns, but, and again, I think my first comment was I wish that there were a way to either conditionally approve it or revisit it after a couple of years just to see and make sure it's working as it was anticipated. But without seeing, without a way to do that, I can support it.
I think what you'll see on this one, this is kind of one that's caught between a pure urban model and a suburban model, in that I think you're going to see certainly cars, but I think you'll see a lot of people walking as well. Heritage Hills is, all of the sidewalks are operational, so I think you'll see a lot of people actually walking and using it as an urban model, but recognizing that you are one block off of the 235 exit right there.
Yeah, and these things get packed
Sure.
at certain parts of the day. They're getting better at having your orders ready in advance and moving people
Right.
quickly. But they get packed, and that's just a serious concern here. But as it's drafted, I can support it, particularly given the changes.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, bad like a Chick-fil-A, but they do get lines, probably more than McDonald's regularly. So.
Yep.
The 20 cars is helpful. That is pretty long queue line.
I would say if you think about other Starbucks, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find one that had this queuing capacity.
Board members, any other questions, comments, or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve case number 14707 for the reasons that it meets statutory requirements for a variance.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the correct case number here. Case number 14707. For the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Thanks. And I do want to thank the board members who are here. Just for one motion, I know Mr. Box thanked the board, but I certainly want to thank the board members who came just for one application. I know the city appreciates it and appreciates your service to the city. Next item on the agenda is additional items, which I see none. Communications and board reports, see none. No citizens to be heard. Any other business? We are adjourned.